Which one is better? Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame? The age-old question will be answered today. Well, actually it's more like a year old, but it's getting answered today by me. I have followed the MCU ever since I first watched Iron Man in 2008. When I was a young chap, over a decade of movies and character development cultivated into these gorgeous films. Infinity War and Endgame are cinematic masterpieces, not necessarily for being masterclasses in cinema, but because of what they stand for. Never have movies been this ambitious and actually pulled it off. No other movie series has created such a majestic universe. I love both of these films to death, and I've never been able to bring myself to choose between them. Until today. Therefore, I, through intense analysis, will be concluding which movie is better, Infinity War or Endgame. So let's get into this. Now, I'm going to start off by talking about the things that are the same. The aspects that are pretty similar in Infinity War and Endgame. And yeah, these don't really contribute towards my final decision, but they're worth mentioning. Naturally, all the effects are pretty spot on for both of these movies. They look insane. I mean, with so much money going into them, I'd sure hope so. Now, there's the occasional weird looking bit of CGI, but nothing that takes you out of the experience. Both films managed to produce such a spectacle, and since so much is relying on aliens and space and magic, I'm pretty fucking glad the effects are superb. The soundtrack in these movies is godlike. Of course, Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme has gone down in history, but the rest of his scores are so elegant and emotional, and without them, these movies just wouldn't be the same. Also, the choice of licensed music is good as well. For example, in Infinity War, before we see the Guardians, the change in music signals to us, the audience, what we're about to see. It creates a more lighthearted tone reminiscent of the Guardians movies. It just shows us from the start that the creators actually know this universe, they know the characters, they know the feelings we feel towards the series. And of course the way the music is used in these movies is epic. And although some scenes are more epic than others, which we will get into later, I still believe that the use of music serves the same purpose in both these movies. And it does it so well. The acting in both these movies is also pretty much on the same level, which you'd expect since it's the same actors with the same directors and the same writers. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. However, one thing they both do so incredibly well, something that I don't think any other movie has pulled off on this scale, is letting each character shine. This is impressive when you think about what a fucking cast they have. There are so many A-list actors in these movies, and the fact that they all have meaningful contributions is insane. That shit shouldn't be possible. Naturally, some of them don't have as large roles across the board, like Captain America in Infinity War and Spider-Man in Endgame. But these characters get way more to do in the other movie, so it's fine. It's perfectly balanced as all things should be, which actually takes us into our first major point of discussion, the big baddie. I think the absolute best part of Infinity War, the thing that makes it so great, is Thanos. The antagonist in this film is so well crafted. He's essentially the main character. At the end of it, he's the victor, the character who gets to look out onto a beautiful field in awe and reflection of his hard work. Also, if you count screen time, then yes, he is the main character. But even then, his presence and resolve are so intriguing that in my mind, he's one of the greatest villains ever in a comic book movie. Actually, I'd even go as far as to say that he can dance among the gods of film. The Joker in The Dark Knight will probably always be my favorite movie villain, but Thanos is definitely up there with him. And yes, it's slightly because of how powerful and badass he is, with his epic monologues, but that's just scratching the surface. The thing that makes Thanos such a good villain is his motivations, and how well the audience understands these emotions, even if we may not go to his extremes. Thanos doesn't want world domination. He's just a titan of mass destruction, though that's not his purpose. He believes it's his destiny to save the universe from starvation and greed and conflict and suffering, and he believes that only he can do this. Somehow his twisted mind has led him to believe that wiping out half the universe is the only way to gain salvation, and he lives by this flawed moral code so strongly. So strongly indeed that we almost start adopting his beliefs as well. We see where his motivations come from. We see the fall of Titan and how his solution would have saved them. And his remorse and sorrow towards that instance further fuels his motivation. We hear how he wiped out half of Gamora's planet and how the people there are thriving now, which provides us with some evidence that maybe his actions are justified. We see how willing he is to sacrifice everything, even his own daughter whom he loves, to complete the task. And when people are willing to risk it all for their purpose in a selfless way, we begin to invest ourselves in that same purpose. We know exactly who Thanos is, what he's feeling and what he wants. We sympathize with him, even though we know he's a torturous, murderous psychopath who's definitely in the wrong. But the fact that we even for a second question whether he's actually right or wrong makes him such a fascinating villain. So many other great villains like Voldemort, Darth Vader, Sauron lack this ability. We know they're wrong from the beginning. It's not a moral question, but with Thanos it is. We as humans empathize with, sympathize with, and understand Thanos, and because of that, he becomes such a resonant character. Thanos is a true lesson in writing intriguing villains, and by far the best thing about Infinity War is how well Thanos is written. However, Thanos is not the same in Endgame. Here he feels different, because he's also Thanos from the past. Not as worthy of empathy, not as dignified, but rather wrathful and spiteful. Thanos is not nearly as interesting or complex in Endgame as he is in Infinity War. Not even close. However, he didn't need to be. Infinity War was all about Thanos' journey, his purpose. So naturally, Endgame is about the Avengers, and them completing their goal. Thanos isn't even the real villain here. The villain is the world he's left the remaining Avengers in, a world without many of their friends and loved ones. The villains they face are the quest itself, bringing everyone back and the desperation they feel. But none of this is done as well as Thanos in Infinity War. Thanos' story is so much more emotional than the time heist, because Thanos is much more engaging as a villain, but also because it wasn't filled with humor. Now, it's not like Infinity War has less humor, because it doesn't. They're probably fairly evenly matched. They're both filled with classic Marvel humor, and I think Infinity War did it a lot better. The whole Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Peter Parker interaction with the Guardians is fucking hilarious. And so many other moments too. Endgame does have good humor as well, but a lot of the jokes just didn't land as well for me as they did with Infinity War. But now you may be confused. I just mentioned how Thanos' story was better than the time heist because it has less humor, but apparently now Infinity War has as much humor. Yes, Infinity War has a lot of humor, but not during Thanos' scene. The source of the humor is always the other characters, even when Thanos is on screen, and so most of Thanos' moments are serious and purposeful, whereas in Endgame, jokes are littered throughout the movie, even in places where the movie really would have benefited from a more serious tone. Now, don't get me wrong, Endgame has some insanely emotional scenes, and we'll get to that later, but also a lot of unnecessary humor in the wrong places. Infinity War spreads out the humor so perfectly, and brilliantly separates it from Thanos himself. This just solidifies the threat of the movie. Thanos, as a real purposeful and emotional character, and not just some lighthearted heist that is often treated as a fun excursion, even though everything depends on it. I just think that Thanos as the villainous force, and the whole plot of Infinity War is more emotionally resonant and memorable than the heist plot in Endgame. Thanos is just amazing. Now, as I said before, I believe Infinity War is funnier than Endgame. At least most of the comedy lands better with me. However, Endgame is more emotional. Infinity War does have many moments of sadness, like Thor talking about his loss with Rocket, Wanda having to kill Vision, but also moments of inspiration and hope, and moments that made the fans scream and go batshit crazy in the cinema. Some of these emotionally charged moments include Thor arriving in Wakanda, and of course the snap. The way Peter begs Tony, clutches at him like a little kid, is absolutely heart-wrenching. Infinity War is emotional as shit, which makes it even that much more impressive to me when I say that Endgame is even more emotional. Tony talking to Pepper in the beginning, Nat dying, Thor dealing with his depression and guilt, Tony talking to his dad, Tony's death, his funeral, Steve Rogers staying in the past to finally live the life he's always wanted, but never could have, with Peggy. And not to mention the Avengers Assemble scene. I get goosebumps from this scene no matter how many times I watch it. It's the cultivation of 11 years of my life in one moment. Nothing will ever top it. Well, excluding The Lord of the Rings because those movies are perfect and much more epic. But this scene to me is also perfect in its own right. The emotions I feel watching Endgame are on a different level to Infinity War. Also because of the finality of it all. It's the end. Of course it's going to be emotional, and I'm invested because of everything that has come before. Endgame is more emotional than Infinity War, but that's probably more to do with the legacy of Endgame and the MCU in general, than Endgame being a technically good movie. I'm still not sure of the answer to this video's titular question, but let's wait to answer that until a bit later. Instead, I want to briefly talk about the climactic scenes in these two movies. The Battle of Wakanda and on Titan in Infinity War, and the final battle in Endgame. Now, the battle on Titan in Infinity War is perfect. The choreography is so well thought out, and each character shines with their specific style. Also, we really get to see a variety of different fighting techniques from Thanos when he uses the specific stones. Like, he could just be fighting with raw power, and it would have been fine, but we see how he manipulates the incoming attacks with the Reality Stone, and he throws a goddamn moon on Tony with the Power Stone. This fight is so fun to watch and exhilarating, and I love Peter Quill ruining the plan in his fury, because no matter how annoying it is, it's absolutely perfect for his character. I love how desperate Tony is in his final battle with Thanos, and I love the curveball thrown at us when Doctor Strange gives Thanos the time stone to save Tony. It makes us confused, but also gives us hope that we realize Strange has a plan. I just really enjoy watching this scene. The Battle of Wakanda is mostly really good. It's just a big CGI army versus army scene, and honestly I feel like it was done so that some of the smaller characters of the film got more time to shine. However, it is fun, doesn't drag on, and has some really good moments like Thor's arrival, I Am Steve Rogers, Wanda having to kill Vision, and of course the arrival of Thanos. This last attempt from the Avengers to hold off Thanos is so hard to watch, because they're so desperate yet so helpless. And when Wanda finally destroys the Mind Stone, Thanos just recreates it. Our stomachs and hearts sink. Then Thor kills Thanos, but oh, he didn't actually, and Thanos snaps. Thanos actually won. He wiped out half the universe, along with a lot of fan favorite characters. The ending with Thanos just smiling on the farm is genius. How many times does this happen? The villain actually winning. Of course now we know what happens, but back then we didn't. The days after watching Infinity War, I couldn't get my mind off of it. The ending is so blunt and emotional, and holy fuck, this is a great movie. The final battle of Endgame, however, has its problems. Of course there are awesome parts, like the Avengers Assembled scene, Cap picking up Mjolnir, I Am Iron Man, and the whole time you won't even be noticing the mistakes, because it's also epic. But afterwards, you may look back at it and think, why don't I really remember it? At least that's what I thought. It's such a big bundle of characters that we love, all having something cool to do, and the plot keeps changing and the goal changes, and then we need to get to the gauntlet away from Thanos. Now get to the time machine, but no, let's take the stones away from Thanos, and then bam, Thanos is dead. The pacing is really quick, which is a weird thing to say when the final battle is so long, but every time a new plan is made or anything of significance happens, it just comes and goes so quickly. In the battle on Titan, we get a moment of softness from Thanos when he talks to Tony, but here there are no real character moments except for the ones I mentioned before, which are mainly in the beginning and the end of the scene. There's a lot of confusing CGI. There's a scene where the female superheroes work together, which would have been a cool scene if it wasn't so forced and stupid. Captain Marvel has just destroyed the big ship. What can Black Widow give her now? Protection? No! Then we see Spider-Man, then Doctor Strange, and then Ant-Man, then Valkyrie, then it's Iron Man and Pepper, then back to Spider-Man, and fuck me, this is all within a minute. I am so confused when watching the scene. Now the moments of greatness are exactly that. They're memorable and epic. However, there isn't much of that here. Unlike the Battle of Titan and Wakanda, there aren't as many moments that we remember so vividly. I think for the most part, Infinity War's final battle is better than Endgame's is, because it focuses a bit more on the story being told, instead of the spectacle. There are more character moments, real character moments, and that to me at least is a big decider. Now, from everything I've said so far, you can probably guess that I think Infinity War is a better movie than Endgame, but it's not that simple. I think Infinity War works better as a movie. It's emotional, and its story beats are better defined, which overall leads to a more fleshed out story. The character study of Thanos is superb, and all the other character arcs are just so well done as well. The action is fun and exhilarating and nerve-wracking. The humor is hilarious and comes at the right times, and that ending shook the fucking world. As a movie, I'd say Infinity War is better than Endgame. But that's the thing, I don't see Endgame as a movie. It's something more. It's the climax of over 20 movies, a franchise sprawling over 11 years that has all led up to this point. No one cares that it doesn't follow the rules of film. Heck, this movie is so chaotic that it has like 3 separate movies inside of it. Nothing will ever make me feel the way I felt watching Endgame for the first time. But that's not because it's a good movie. It's because of my absolute love for the franchise. It wouldn't be nearly as good if I wasn't such a long-term fan. Infinity War was a lot more liked by people who had never seen a Marvel movie before, because it's just a really good movie. But Endgame is something else. It's probably the only movie in the world that I wouldn't call a movie. It's a love child. Infinity War is the better movie, but Avengers Endgame will forever have a massive place in my heart. I can't choose between these two. If I watch Infinity War, I'm going to watch Endgame. They're one and the same. Alright, that wasn't very concluding. I guess I just clickbaited you guys. No, but seriously, if I were to say which movie is the best as a film reviewer, I'd definitely say Infinity War. It's something else. And for such a high-end blockbuster, it definitely doesn't depend on effects to tell a story. It's just a solid movie. And probably my favorite MCU movie. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you think I'm right or wrong, then tell me down in the comments. And if you want more videos like this, then be sure to leave a like and perhaps subscribe for more content. In my last video, I called out another YouTuber for being too harsh on Star Wars The Last Jedi, so if you want to watch that, then it should be on screen right now. Anyways, I hope you're all staying safe. Peace out.